Welcome to the Voices of a Black Man. My name is CK James, and today we have the pleasure of speaking with Mr. Velton Showell. The Voices of Black Men is a platform for Black men to be seen and heard for who they are, dispelling myths that they fit in stereotypical boxes that society have put them in for hundreds of years. Boxes such as silence equals absence or angry equals aggressive. So today we have Mr. Velton Showell, who's going to tell his story through his lens, because as society has begun to tell the Black man's story, that's what's been missing, the Black man. So, Mr. Showell, thank you for coming on today. How are you doing?
DK, I'm fantastic. How are you today?
I am doing well. I'm super excited about getting started with you and learning more about who Mr. Velton Showell is.
Well, I'm an open book. I'm a really a simple story, but there are some hidden secrets in my story. I guess is the best way to put it. Right.
All right, well, let's get going and see what we can find out here. So I'm going to start right at the beginning. Who
Mhm.
is a young Velton Showell? Where did he grow up?
Oh wow, geez, young Velton Showell. Well, I grew up. I'm originally from Camden, New Jersey, born and raised. Camden is, I guess, the eastern city cousin to Philadelphia. We're right across the bridge, about a mile away. I grew up in the inner city. And as a small child, lived in a great neighborhood. It was a progressive neighborhood with hardworking people and two wonderful parents who worked very hard. And one of the things that my parents always dreamed of and decided that when I was a kid is that they would give their children the best that they could. So they sent me to private school. I went to private school from pre-kindergarten all the way up through sixth grade. It's very interesting because as a young black kid, I was the only black kid in any of my classes
Wow.
from pre-kindergarten to sixth grade. Now, that may sound um, interesting and tough, or it may sound to some people very attractive, and to other people very unattractive.
Mhm.
I guess what I found is the most interesting part of that is going to school every day in the suburbs in a private school and coming home every day into the inner city in a predominantly African American neighborhood. You know, not a bad thing, but think about this. For those of you who have small children, I think this might be something that you want to at least think about. Here I am going to school every day in a foreign land, so to speak, where I'm the only person in any of the classes who looks like me. And my level of exposure based on my environment was a certain way. Secondarily, because I went to school in another location, when I came home on the weekend, I had a new adventure.
Mm.
When kids go to school together, they, especially back when I was growing up, the kids all walked to school together. They all played on the way to school. They played jokes on each other. They played games. They went to school. They heard what was going on in class. They interacted all day. They went to recess. Then they went to lunch, and then they walked home together. All of the stories, all of the interactions, all of the issues that arose during the week while they were doing these things, I was totally oblivious.
Mm.
I had no idea what was going on. I had no part of that. So sometimes I became the brunt of the joke because everybody else understood the joke and I didn't.
Mhm.
So now I have to try to fit in or get in where I fit in that environment. And then I go back to school on Monday. And again, I have to get in where I fit in another environment. Now you may say, oh my gosh, that's horrible for a kid. But here's the lesson. And I think this happens to us all the way through our adult life. Those stumbling blocks that we feel have been put in our way become the stepping stones to learning. It allowed me to understand how to be flexible, how to interchange my personality, my thought process, and my interactions with people based on the environment.
Mhm.
And as I grew and got older and moved into the business environment, or even before then, I understood how to get in and fit in with different types of people. So that was a major lesson for me. And that's something that developed me as a kid very, very early.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's
So,
part of,
go ahead.
I said that's part of who I am. I mean, there's a lot more to the story. I was an athlete and played football until I went to college. And, uh, very social, very interacting with a lot of people. Um, Somewhat of an introvert when I was a kid. Uh, didn't have a girlfriend until I got to high school. All the guys in the neighborhood thought I was, something was wrong with me because they all had girlfriends and I spent all my time in the weight room.
So, did you say you were focused at a young age?
That's the rumor.
So, you said from K to 6, you went to private school. So, what happened after 6th grade?
Well, in sixth grade, my parents actually moved. They saved enough money to buy a new house. They built a house in the suburbs, and we moved to a small community in a town called Choose Landing, right next to Somerdale. For those of you who know anything about South Jersey, and it was called Broadmoor. And we were the first African American family to move into that development. So that was a total change for me and kind of a shock because my all of my friends in the neighborhood didn't look like me, kind of like it was when I went to school until a few other African American families moved into the neighborhood at a later time. But also because of the fact that we moved to the suburbs and the school that I had gone to only went to the sixth grade, I got my first encounter in public school. Uh, I went to seventh grade, eighth grade, ninth grade, and 10th grade in public school. Now, it's interesting because a lot of times we think that our inability to interact with people as Black people is totally racially driven. It's not. And I'll say this to you. When I was in private school, as I said, I was the only Black kid in any of my classes. But the socioeconomic status of the kids in my class was very, very high. When I went to public school, the socioeconomic status of a lot of the kids in my neighborhood and class was not quite as high. So the competition was different. Okay, they kind of resented me more than the people who were more wealthy. So I had issues, number one, with that, but number two, I had issues because of the education that I had received, put me in the upper level classes in public school, and again, caused a certain amount of resentment for people who weren't in those higher classes. So I was sitting there going, oh man, this is a tough situation. I didn't like it. Plus, I was used to 12 people in my class. Now I got 20, 22. So the learning style became different. First time I'd ever changed classes, which happens to all kids. And it was just a very, very tough environment. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't do well. And I guess it was one of the most tumultuous times of my life. But again, I learned a lot of lessons. And I still have friends, multiracial friends from all of those environments. But the issue was I needed to get out of that environment. In my junior and senior year, I went back to private school, went to a Catholic high school, and graduated from Catholic high school, and then went on to Rutgers University, where I studied economics and business, and subsequently uh, joined a fraternity, and then started in the hospitality.
Now, Mr. Showell, I have to ask you this. What fraternity did you join?
I'm gonna. I'm well. As I can't say it without saying I'm a member of the greatest fraternity in the world. A member of Omega Psi Phi fraternity.
Omega Psi Phi. Okay. I guess we can still have this conversation.
Uh-oh.
No,
Well,
I'm just messing. My husband's an alpha, alpha Phi
oh,
alpha.
well, I tell all my alpha friends the same thing. You can tell your husband. He's got to be a good guy because Martin Luther King Sr. was an Omega, and he still let Martin come home, even though he showed up at the meeting on the wrong night.
I'll, I'll take it. I'll take it. So now I have to ask you this serious question, though, Mr. Shaw.
Yeah.
And it may seem kind of strange, but it's a key question that we ask here.
Mm-hmm.
When was the first time you realized that you were not just a young man, but a black man, and what did that mean to you?
Hmm. I think the first time I really realized it is when I went to public school. Now, let me just say this to you, and this is why I say that. When, I'll be 62 years old in December, so I'm not a young guy. But when I went to private school, I was in private school in 1963, 1960, like 1965 during the Civil Rights Movement. Because of the socioeconomic status of the kids I went to school with, I was going to their homes, sitting at their dinner table with their family, a black kid. So that wasn't normal. And I'm not bragging, but this is reality. It wasn't a normal thing. To me, it was normal because they were just my friends. And, through slavery, I have white relatives. It's not like I don't have any. I mean, I'm light skinned. Come on now. This didn't just happen because they kept me in the shed with my ancestors in the shed and then let them go out in the sun and all. There was some interracial marriages in England. But anyway, when I got to public school, I was having difficulty in one of my classes. And what the teacher, who was the gentleman, was very, very hard on me. And to the point where my grades were so bad, he wanted a conference with my mother. So my mother went to the school and sat with the teacher. And he said to my mother, Velton's prejudiced. He's a very prejudiced kid. He has a very difficult time interacting with the white students in our class. And my mother looked at him and said, what? She said, he has a problem. Velton's very racist. And my mother looked at him and she said, you don't even know that. You don't even know Velton's history. For you to sit here and tell me that tells me that you have no idea of anything about that. And he asked her, my mother told me the story, what do you mean? She said, Velton's been in private school up until this year. He's been the only black kid in any of his classes up until this year. So he knows exactly how to deal with people of other races and colors. And for you to tell me that he's racist tells me a story about you. So when my mother came home that night, she sat me down and told me the story of the conference with the teacher, because I was sitting home going, oh Lord, when she come home, I'm in trouble. I might as well go put on some extra drawers and find me some pillows to put on my behind because I'm in deep trouble. And when I was growing up, if your parents, number one, got a note, number two, got a phone call, or number three, had to take time off of their job to go to work for your foolishness, oh Lord, have mercy. But when my mom came home, I was expecting her to be upset. And instead she said, come on in the kitchen and sit down. We need to talk. And she explained to me the conversation that she had with the teacher. And she further explained to me that everybody wasn't like him, but her expectation of how I would fare grades-wise in his class was not good. However, just because the grades aren't good doesn't mean you don't have an obligation to learn as much as you can learn. Because whatever somebody tries to take from you, they can't take away what you put up here. What you learn and put in your brain, no one can ever separate you from. And that was a lesson that I learned from a racial differential standpoint, but also it allowed me to understand the concept that even though people may put you in a situation that you don't want to be in, and which and we'll talk about this later, surface later in my life. Learn as much as you can in that situation, because whatever you learn is yours forever.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Wow. I want to ask you a really serious question. You talked about being able to go to the young kids' houses and sit at their dinner tables and eat. Do you think that your fair skin played a part in that at all?
Yes and no. I think it played somewhat of a part in it, but I tell you what plays a bigger part in it, and most African Americans understand. In most situations, our Caucasian brothers and sisters
Mhm.
are okay with one or two of us. But now when you get to five or six, now we got an issue. Too many of
Mhm.
y'all.
Mhm.
I went to a party much later. I'll never forget it. One of our Caucasian friends invited us to a party at her house. And when we fell in the door, about 7 or 8 deep, we heard in the crowd getting mighty dark in here. Okay. So that let me know. Now, we had singularly
Yeah.
been with the same group, or one or two of us had been around the same group
Yeah.
previously and never heard anything. So a lot of it is what society has created us to be. And we're starting to see a lot of that today
Mhm.
in the situations that we have with the police and so forth and so
Mhm.
on. But the bright spot is, after George Floyd unfortunately was killed, we start to see a lot of interracial demonstration with future generations saying, hey, this is unacceptable. We just have to continue to move in that
Mhm. Mhm. Since you were old enough to remember the civil rights movement,
direction.
and then looking at today, what are the similarities and the differences that come to your mind?
It's interesting. Civil rights movement. My mother actually went to the March on Washington, and my family's been in politics since I was a baby. My uncle was the second African American city councilman in the city of Camden, first black director of public works, and my mother actually and him started the Young Democrats of the city, and my mother eventually ran for city council, was on the housing authority up until she got sick about 7 years ago. So I've watched, us really develop through the civil rights movement. And I'll say this: we've come a long way through the civil rights movement, but we've had some hiccups and some issues. I'll never forget my great grandfather sat me down one day and we were talking. He said, the greatest thing that ever happened to black people was desegregation. He said, the worst thing that ever happened to black people was desegregation. I said, what are you talking about? How can you say it's the best thing on this side and the worst thing on this side? He said, the best thing is because we've earned the right to vote. We have a lot of opportunities that we didn't previously have because of desegregation, but we lost everything. That's what do you mean we lost everything? He said we lost our drugstores in our community. We lost our um, grocery stores in our community because these were all black owned and black run. We lost a lot of our small businesses in our community. Why? Because the larger mainstream companies came into our communities and took over. Or they forced our businesses out of business because their pricing structure was so much less because of their ability to buy volume that our small black business owners couldn't compete. So now the only thing you see in our communities are liquor stores, churches, schools, and a hospital. And even the hospitals we don't. We are we have black doctors and nurses and employees, but we don't run and own the hospitals like we used to. And I sat there and was like, Wow. He said, what we have to understand, what we have to eventually do is to recognize the importance of turning over our dollar in our community before we allow it to go out. Prioritizing our purchases to build wealth versus satisfying our ego or satisfying our passion. What do I mean by that? My good friend Dr. George Frazier said this. He said, I'd rather have a bag, a paper bag with $5,000 in it versus a Gucci bag that cost me $5,000 with $10 inside.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or I'd rather have a 4-bedroom house with 3 bathrooms and a great backyard that I can sit in and look out at the sky and the sun versus pulling a Mercedes up to the price. So it's about our mindset. It's about understanding what the opportunities are and taking advantage of those things that, number one, sustain us. Number two, build generational wealth. What will your children's children's children say about you? What will they know about you? What legacy are you going to be able to leave? This is where we are now. Yes, we are. The process is different. We're still suffering from some of the pains of slavery and some of the things that we started in the civil rights movement that have not totally been set up to be permanent. You know, we have this issue now with the Voters' Rights Act that's now risen its head. That shouldn't be something that comes up every 10, 15 years. That should be something that's put in place permanently so that we can drive on and look at other things. You know, we've got an occupant of the White House right now who's rescinding the Fair Housing Act. Well, we're going back to now, are we going back to redlining? These are the things that we have to focus on. These are the things that we have to understand that are our new directives and our new points of action. Now, how do we fix these things? It's not totally through demonstration, and I'll tell you why. Think about training a dog, okay? If you throw the ball and the dog goes and gets the ball and brings it back and gives the dog a treat, the dog understands that if I go chase the ball and I bring it back, I'll get a treat. And every time that you throw the ball and I get the ball and I bring it back, I get a treat, okay? So you condition that dog to respond a certain way, and you are now conditioned to respond a certain way to that dog. When you're out there marching and demonstrating for years and years and years and years and years, people become conditioned on how to deal with it, what to do about it. Now, conversely, we're going back to the mind. If we educate ourselves, we become experts in certain things. We now understand how to fix the process ourselves. And we start with ourselves. We fix us first. Then we can fix them. One of the greatest things that I learned by the dynamics of my education, going from an African-American neighborhood to a predominantly Caucasian school, was I learned how to deal with the people who liked me, and I learned to deal with the people who didn't. Now, did I always tell the people who liked me I was happy and glad that they liked me? No. But I didn't tell the people who didn't like me that I understood that they didn't, and that they didn't have my best interest in mind. Why? Because it's my advantage. I know something about you that you don't know. So what we have to do is to educate ourselves so that we know things that not everybody thinks we know. We start to fix problems and issues that everybody doesn't think we're working on. And we keep it internal. and we continue to work. One of the greatest groups I ever heard of was On My Brother's Keeper. We have to start embracing our brothers, all of us. It's not all their fault that they're out there and they don't have the direction that we'd like them to have. I spoke to a group of friends not long ago, and we were talking about the condition in some of our neighborhoods where I'm from. And the drug kingpins have really almost taken over some of the neighborhoods. And the discussion was this: part of it's our fault. And one of the brothers said, "What do you mean my fault?" I said, well, bottom line is we were all blessed and fortunate. We went to college. We got a great education. We built a foundation for ourselves and our family, and we moved away. We don't go back that often other than to see mom. And when I used to go back to see mom, if I saw one of the guys who didn't fare as well as me walk by the house, if I opened the door to go out there, my mother would yell at me and say, "Boy, don't go out there. That boy is not the boy that you grew up with. He's changed. You don't know what he's into." And I'd turn around and I'd say to my mom, I said, "Mom," I said, "I don't know what he's into. I'm not going to his house. I'm not going to the club with him. I'm not going to the bar with him. We're not even going to walk around the corner. But I can't let somebody that I've known since I was 4 or 5 years old walk by without me saying, 'Hey, man, how you doing? How's everything going? How you feel?' And if the man says, 'Man, I'm down on my luck. I don't have no money and I'm hungry,' I'm going to give him $5 or $10 if it's in my pocket. That's just how I'm made. But here's the issue. When we, as successful Black men, leave our neighborhoods, and a lot of times we have to, currently. We don't always have to, but we have to. We should, even if we leave, we got to go back. When I go home, I go back into the neighborhood, and I purposely go to the Boys and Girls Clubs and places like that, and I speak to the kids. And I go in there and I tell them, I walk the same streets that you walk. They're different now than they were when I walked them, but there were still issues when I walked. But I walk the same streets that you walk. I'm from. Okay? Because when we don't go back, who become their role models? Who get Ray the drug dealer? So now their mindset is, I don't see anybody in a suit. I don't see anybody who gets up every morning and dressed up to go to work. All I see is the only people I see that are dressed up, that are clean and have the nice cars and everything, are the guys and ladies that are out there selling drugs or doing something. So we have to change that. And the only people that can change that is us. We have to be willing to go back and set the example. And not just walk around, but spend the time with each other. And don't go, the other thing is we can't go in there preaching. Okay? We can't go in there telling them, I'm going to teach you how to do something without spending the time and becoming first the servant before we try to become the leader. We are the servant first. Think, and I'm going to go biblical now. One of the greatest leaders that ever walked the face of the earth was Jesus. Jesus was the leader, but he washed the feet of his disciples. So we have to first understand that we have to have a servant mentality to be able to reach the youth of tomorrow. Because they don't want you coming in there preaching to them. And one of the favorite things that I tell people all the time, people will lose interest in what you teach unless you practice what you preach. So we have to be willing to be the servant. We have to be willing to listen. Go back to my great-grandfather. One of the things he told me as a kid, he said, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth to listen twice as much as you speak. So go in and listen. I go in sometimes and I'll sit down and listen to the kids. I coached soccer for 12 years. Okay? And I listened to the kids. They used to come find me to have conversations with me, not even soccer related, about what's going on in their lives. what their issues were. And I think I took that from my dad because that's how my dad
When you go there to almost mentorship or just having those positive influences in your life, as you're doing with when you go back home, as well as you've done over your life with soccer and I'm sure in other places. As you look in your life, who were some of the influences that molded and shaped you to be who you are today?
Ooh, how much time you got? Ooh, Lord, have mercy. You know, I tell some of my friends, I tell my friend, I say, you know, number one, God's still working on me because you know, I'm a little slow. I didn't go to school on the short bus, but I've been a project since I was a kid. I think family is where the first influences come. You know, a lot of times, well, in most instances, your first teacher is your mother. And I was fortunate I grew up with both parents. But I was also fortunate that I had aunts and uncles. You know, I told you one of my uncles was a city councilman. My other uncle was the first black bus driver in the city. He worked for public service. I had another uncle was one of the top black firemen. So I had a very, very strong foundation from a family standpoint. Then I had two great grandfathers. One of them graduated from Delaware State College in 1911. People say, were you the first black person to graduate from college in your family? I didn't have a snowball's chance, and you know where, to be first. This man went to Delaware State College and graduated in 1911 after paying his own way. Because he told he had 8 siblings, and he told his dad, his dad was a sharecropper. You can't afford to send me to college. I'm going to pay my own way, which he did. My other great-grandfather ran away from home when he was 16. He was from Virginia, him and 3 of his friends in a truck. And we drove to Philadelphia. And when he died, he owned the largest furniture warehouse in the city of Philadelphia and was a millionaire. So I got an opportunity to see black men going through and being excellent. And I got to see what family really meant because I had multiple examples as a kid. And I mean, as I said, how much time you got? Because the list, I just highlighted a few of the people on that long list. You know, then I got into my first jobs in corporate America. I had, you know, some mentors. The book that I'm just releasing called Leadership Dynamics, The Principles of Leadership. I talk about a gentleman, Robert L. Steele III. We have something in common there. Who was one of my mentors, and to this day, I call Robert occasionally to check on him. He's a little older than me, but he was one of my mentors in the hospitality industry from the time I started until the time I left the industry, and he poured so much knowledge and information into me, and I was able to pick up the phone and call him and talk to him at different times. Another brother who's still with the original company that I started with, Hyatt Hotels and Resorts, Michael Steele, who's the general manager of the Hyatt Regency in New Orleans. Or not Michael Smith, I'm sorry. The general manager of Hyatt Regency New Orleans was one of those confidants that I was able to talk to and mentored me through a lot of things. To this day, you know, where I'm a speaker, a trainer, a coach, an author, and there are people that I aspire to be like, or that have mentored me. Les Brown, I've spent time with Les. Willie Jolly is a very close friend and mentor. Dr. Dennis Kimbrough, who is down at Clark Atlanta University. Dr. George Frazier, who has the Power Networking Conference. These are all people that I learn from and I glean information from. I'm able to bounce ideas and questions off of. And that's really what all of us need from a mentoring standpoint. Somebody that we can ask a question and get an honest answer, whether it's the answer that we thought we wanted or the answer that we really needed. Like I said, the list goes on. My father-in-law is another one of my favorite people, mentors, who was a guy who took the lowest paying job in the aluminum extrusion plant when he was young and retired at 55 as the vice president general manager of the plant. So I've been blessed. I've had people that I've been able to say, I want to be like him. I want to be like her. I want to do what they've done. I want to do, not just do what they've done, I want to exceed where they are. What do I have to do to learn? You know, a lot of it is, again, what you put up here. How much time do you spend sharpening the axe? They said about Abraham Lincoln said that if he had to cut down a tree and he had to cut it down in 5 hours, he'd spend 4 hours sharpening his axe and 1 hour chopping down the tree. That's what we have. That's the mindset we have to develop. We have to develop the preparation to be excellent. And the mentors that we surround ourselves will give us the ammunition to be excellent. I stand on the shoulders of a lot of people.
So do you think that that's something, I hear you saying mentorship is very important in anyone's life. Do you think that that's part of why we are where we are in society today, is the lack of mentorship kind of across the board, if we can go wide?
I think yes, because we've been conditioned. You know, we talk about how the heirs of slavery, and they did a number on us. Slavery was, 400 years. They did a number on us because the slave mentality was, I got mine, you get yours. And to this day, sometimes I don't want to generalize and say we always operate that way, but more times than we should, we operate that way. When one of us makes it, instead of reaching back and grabbing somebody else and pulling them along, we say, look at that person, oh my gosh. And so what we have to do is be willing to pull somebody up, to put our arms around somebody and say, come on, man, I got you. Okay? Now, that's not going to always work. It's going to, but hopefully it'll work more times than it will. And then even if it doesn't, how much pain is it going to cause us just to reach back? If you reach back, a lot of times, and I went home a few years ago, and one of my fraternity brothers ran a home for wayward boys. And I went and spoke at the home for wayward boys. There's 50 kids sitting in a room. Every one of them was already in the system. They all had ankle bracelets. It hurt me to my heart. But I told the story. And when I got there, everybody was leaning back in the chair. Oh, Lord, he got another one. Look at him. He come, I don't want to hear this. What's he got that's going to interest me? Les Brown told me when you show up on stage, there's 3 things people want to know. Who are you? What do you have? And why should I care? And I saw that on the face of every one of those kids when I stepped in front. But here's the thing. They thought I was going to come in there and preach and teach. I started with a story. Because I wasn't, I told you the glamour and glitz side of it. But Velton wasn't always on the glamour and glitz side. Velton wanted to be cool. Velton wanted to hang out with the boys who were getting all the girlfriends and had all the attention. And I hung out with the wrong crowd. And I was 19 years old at a party and a bullet grazed my cheek. I still carry the scar to this day. And I told the story. And the story actually happened in Philadelphia. And as I started telling the story, the same guy that was like this sat up. He wanted to hear this story. And so I told the story, and I started getting their attention. And I asked a mathematical question. And one of these young men answered this question in 30 seconds. And I looked at him and I said, you're a genius. What are you doing? And he looked at me and I said, you answered that mathematical question in 30 seconds. That's the mind of a genius. And the boy, a tear rolled down his face. And I asked June, who was my fraternity brother, was running, I said, what's up with this kid? He said, it's a tough story. So what do you mean? His mother threw him out of the house when he was 11. He's now 16. Threw him out of the house at 11 years old. I said, what? He said, now. He said, don't be too sympathetic. So what do you mean? He said he moved to New York City. He owns a co-op in New York. And he has an apartment here in Philadelphia. He's here in Philadelphia on a bench warrant. He's a drug dealer. Okay? So when I went back and I started talking to him, I said, I want to see you here the next time I come back here. I said, because you're a genius. If you take that genius inside of you and utilize it for something legal, and we can surround you with the right people, sky's the limit for you. He said, well, I'm probably going to have to go do some time. And I said, well, I know you're here on a bench warrant, and the judge, because he's only 16, made him move back in with his mom. And I said, so, well, when you finish with this bench warrant, he said, I said, you know, when you get cleared, then we can start. He said, well, I got to go back to New York because I got some charges up there. And he said, for that one, I'm going to have to do some time. I said, time? He said, yeah, I had 3 packages and 2 bundles. This boy wasn't selling me small stuff. Okay? And I said, man, look. I said, regardless, you're a genius. You are a walking genius. And this is not the life that you should be living. You have so much potential. The boy broke down and started crying. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm not trying to, he said, nobody's ever talked to me. All I've ever heard is I'm not shit, I'm never going to be shit, I'm never going to amount to anything. I'm just like my darn father. And that's what I've lived for 16 years. So, not blaming his mom. I'm not even blaming his dad. He probably disappeared. I'm blaming us collectively because it takes a village to raise a child. And nobody in the village was reaching out to this kid and mentoring him in a way where they could reach him. And I'm not saying they didn't reach out to him, because we reach out to people sometimes and it's just not the right fit. It's just not the right message. It's just not the right time. But we got to continue to try. We got to try different, think about it, in a laboratory, they try different experiments to come up with the formula that's going to make the process finally correct. Mm-hmm. And that's what we have to do with our youth. That's what we have to do with our community. That's what we have to do with our people. We got to continue to work together. We got to continue to try different things to get the best possible formula to sustain us and to grow us and for us to work into a situation that is light years ahead of where we were in the civil rights movement and light years of versus where we are today.
What is it that you would like society to know about Black men?
I think the one thing that I really want society to know about Black men is you cannot generalize and categorize us all and lump us all together. We are individuals. We all think differently. We all talk differently. We all walk differently. We may put our pants on one leg at a time, just like everybody else, but that's not who we are. Take the time to know who we are before you assume who we might be. So I really want people to look at us as human beings before you look at us for our color. You know, Martin Luther King said that he dreamed of a day where his children will be judged by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin. Now, he was talking about his little girls, but he also had a son. And as black men, when we encounter non-black, because it's not just Caucasian, it's not just that there's racism between black and white. There's racism in every walk of life, in every color. Brown people versus black. We talk about the division between African Americans and Latinos. You know there's racism from Latino country to Latino country? Okay. Nobody's born racist. Racism is learned. Nobody's born prejudicial. Prejudice is learned. So what I want the world to understand about black men, white men, brown men, green men, purple men, whatever color man he is, know the person, know the personality, know the mindset. Stop looking at the outer shell. And especially my brothers, black brothers and sisters. Number one, stop looking at each other that way. And number two, the world will stop looking at us that way too if we start looking at ourselves differently. It's not what you call me, it's what I answer to. You can call me whatever you want to, and I can ignore you. But when I start answering to it, that's when it really starts. So I want the world to understand that we're no longer going to answer to the N-word. We're no longer going to call each other the N-word, because that's not who we are. We're individuals, we're scholars, we're doctors, we're lawyers, we're Indian chiefs, we're professors, we're scientists. We've created some of the greatest inventions the world's ever seen. All we ask for is the opportunity to show, the opportunity to accept, the opportunity to stand shoulder to shoulder with anybody who's willing and create things that the world has never seen, imagined, or realized. But it's opportunity. It's a dream.
Wow. So I have to ask, because at some point you talked about a wife. So at some point you decided to get married, have a family, all of that stuff. What responsibilities did you take on your shoulders by deciding, number one, to get married? And then number two, I don't know if you have kids or not. So number two, having a family. As a black man, what responsibilities and what weight did that put on your shoulders?
Well, well, first of all, getting married, you become the head of the household. You have the responsibility to partner with, stand shoulder to shoulder with the person that you decided to spend the rest of your life with. So you take on the responsibility of being a co-builder and a person who it's not about me, it's about us. You become a teammate. I guess is the best way to put it. And I've heard, I'm a sports guy, so I'm gonna quote Phil Jackson. Where Phil Jackson said, "Good teams become great when the players trust each other enough to replace me with we." And the greatest team ever built was a couple that gets married. So you're no longer me, now it's we. And what's best for us. And then when you add children to the equation, now you become, as I said earlier, a teacher, a mentor, a confidant, a father or a mother. A black man is a father. You become a role model. You become a coach. You can become a confidant. And you become an example to your son of what a man is and what a man is supposed to be and what a man is supposed to do. And to your daughter the kind of man that she wants to now one day marry and live her life. So you take on responsibilities that are way over and above your individual well-being. Now you are looking at the well-being of multiple people around you that are relying on you, who count on you, who look up to you. So it's a big obligation, but it's one of the greatest opportunities that anyone could ever have. I'm blessed. I've been married for 35 years, and I have two wonderful children. My son is 33 years old. He lives in Virginia. He's an epidemiologist, so he's very busy with COVID-19. Mm-hmm. And I have a daughter who is 4.5 years younger, so she's 28. She'll be 29 in December. She's an attorney, and she works for a firm that represents insurance companies. So both of my children are very well accomplished, and they are great kids, but it took a lot of hard work. It took my involvement. I coached soccer for 12 years, not because I knew anything about soccer, because I played American football. But my son started playing soccer when he was 4 years old, and I traveled all over the country. But for me to be involved in his life and to be involved in his passion and what he loved, I started taking classes to learn how to coach soccer. And I became a soccer coach, a licensed soccer coach. And later on, he and I both got our referee's license together. And we refereed together on the weekend. And he bought his first car from just refereeing weekend games and tournaments. So it gave me the opportunity, and it gives us as Black men and Black fathers the opportunity to be in our children's lives. My daughter was a ballet dancer. Ballet, jazz, tap, liturgical. She did it all. And I'll never forget, I used to tell my son, well, your sister has a recital this weekend and you don't have a game. We're going to the recital. And he's like, man, I got to go to that recital? That's so long. I said, sit your butt in that car. Since she was in a stroller and a bassinet, she's been sitting out on a soccer field watching your little butt run up and down the damn field every Saturday and Sunday, sometimes Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday, since she came into this world. So yeah, you're going to the recital and you're not going to sleep. You're going to record it.
So when I say this word, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
When I say this word, I just want to know, what does it mean to you and your thoughts about it? The word is intentional.
Intentional? Mm-hmm. Ooh, wow, what a powerful word. Intentional means that you do it because it's the right thing to do. One of the things that I always motivate myself with, I do what I have to do when I have to do it, whether I like it or not. That's intentional. I do what I have to do when I have to do it, whether I like it or not. No debate. That's intentional. You're intentional because you know it's the right thing to do. And you do it with everything from your mind, body, and soul. And you will stand by it because you know you believe in it in your heart of hearts with everything you got. And that's being intentional.
What about focus?
Focus. Focus is the state of mind. Focus is a state of being engaged. Whatever you focus on is what you really end up being. So to be focused means that I study this, I live it, I walk it, I talk it, and I'm about it. That's who I am, that's what I am, and that's where I feel as though I can make the greatest impact on everybody around me and the greatest impact on myself. That's what focus means. To be driven, to be intentional, to be not holding back anything, but really spending the time. You know, one of the principles that I talk about in my book for leaders is there's no hocus pocus. It's all about your focus.
Mm.
It's not a game. It's not a magic show. You'll see the results on the things that you focus on. So if you want the right results, up your game with the focus.
Mm. Now, when you talk about focus and you talk about being intentional, I have to ask, because some people are going to say, great, you've had a lot of opportunities. You've had the right people in your life. I don't have those people in my life. I didn't get to start where you started. What would you say to that?
Well, you know, CK, we talked about the happy times.
Yeah.
Um, One of the stories that I tell a lot of times to audiences is, you know, I talked about spending 27 years in the hospitality industry. When I started in the hospitality industry back in 1983, it wasn't a piece of cake. I didn't have the mentor that I ended up with Robert Steele until I had walked out the door and quit. That's how he became my mentor. He brought me back. But what happened was I wanted to be a salesperson. And they told me, we don't think you're sales material. Now we're talking about a black man. At that time, there were 6 blacks in sales in the entire company. And I wanted to be a salesperson. They told me, you're not sales material. I had an interview, and the interview didn't go well. So they told me, now you're going to have to start earning your keep around. I was forced to take a job that nobody wanted. Job that I didn't want. I became a hotel assistant manager. 3 nights, 2 days a week, and every weekend. Hotels running 99% occupancy on an annual basis. There's not an empty room in the house on any given night. For 18 months, I had to take that job. It's the only job there was. And I just came out of the training program, so I didn't really have the experience to command a lot more money or opportunity in the marketplace. So I became a hotel assistant manager for 18 months. You know, I didn't want that job. Nobody else in the hotel wanted that job. So that wasn't an opportunity, but it was an opportunity. See, a lot of times your opportunity comes disguised. I talked about a lot of quotes, but Thomas Edison said this: most people miss their opportunity because it shows up dressed in overalls and looks like work. And that's really what this was. Because I wanted to be a salesperson, but they made me become a hotel assistant manager, which meant when all of the upper level managers left the building, I was in charge. I had the responsibility, but very little of the power. I had to coerce people into doing what I needed them to do to get the job done, because they didn't work for me. But in my job, usually I went to work at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I got off at 2 in the morning. And I came back the next day at 3 and worked till 2. And I did that 3 nights a week. Then I had 2 days off, and then Saturday morning I got to the hotel at 8 o'clock and I worked till 6. Okay? So I did that for 18 months. But here's what it taught me. You know, here I am. I want to be a salesperson, and am I pissed off? Oh, oh man. If I had a voodoo doll with the person who told me no and a pin, I've been sticking pins in it every day because I was that angry. But anyway, here's what happened. I started interacting with every department in the hotel. I started getting to know the lowest level employee in that department and the highest level of employee in that department. And we started having to work together to solve problems that were arising. I learned the things that the salespeople were doing that was putting the operation in jeopardy. And these people, a lot of them, hated sales. One person said, yeah, they sell the dream when we manage the nightmare. And so through this process, I was learning. I was growing. I was maturing. I was uncovering information that I otherwise wouldn't have had if I had just gone directly into sales. That's why these other people didn't have that information, because they had a lot of times gone directly into sales. The end of the 18 months, because I figured this out with Robert's help, the general manager called me into his office and says, we put you in that job because we thought it would make you quit. How many times in your life do people do things to make you quit? Yeah. But he had to say to me, you've been the best hotel assistant manager we've ever had. What can we do for you? That's when the door opens. When we put in the work, when we put in the time, when we put in the effort, even though we don't want to, doors open. And I said, you know what I want? I don't know why we're having this conversation. I want to be a salesperson. And he said, well, I can't put you in there. I can't make them take you, but I'll put you in there to learn what you need to learn. Maybe one of the other hotels will give you an opportunity. I went into the department 2 weeks later. The guy who was doing the job that I wanted got fired. The boss called me into the office and said, I'm not giving you the job, okay? But I need you to maintain it until I figure out what I'm going to do. Now and again, I thought I had arrived. Hey, I did it. I'm in. He's gone. He's out. I'm going to be in. No. Another stumbling. Another misfortune. Didn't have anybody helping, other than they gave me the opportunity to get in the department. What do you do? Well, you got a choice to make. You got a choice to make. You can go back and poor me, woe is me, and cry and kick and get upset and end up getting fired or getting taken back out. But what I decided to do is I said, she must think I'm crazy. I'm going to work my behind off. And I worked and worked and worked for 2 weeks. I was sitting in the cafeteria getting lunch, and the phone rang. The phone on the wall. We didn't have cell phones. And somebody said, Velton, it's Karen. What did I do? Because when the boss calls, usually it's not a good thing. So I go over. I said, hello. She said, I need to see you in my office right away. Now my heart sunk. I said, all right, I got to throw my food away. And now I got to go figure out, what is it that I didn't do? What customer did not call back? What thing that I did not send to the operations people that she's going to kick my behind? So I get there, I walk, and she said, close the door and sit down. And anytime you've been in a situation where somebody tell you, come on in here and close the door and sit down, I was like, okay, I'm on pins and needles. She says, I didn't think it was possible. She said, you booked more business in 2 weeks than Michael booked in 6 months. The job is yours. Wow. Now, I'm not telling you that story to brag. That's not what this story is about. What this story is about is I had a choice. Just like everybody else in life has a choice. You can choose to be combative, to be negative towards everything and everybody around you, or you can figure out how to outsmart people. Remember when I talked about what goes up here? The one thing that I want all of our young black men to understand, we talk about being macho, and that's one of the things that we're accused of, is being macho. Well, let me tell you about what macho really means. The strongest muscle in your body is your brain. You want to be macho, strengthen it. Make it stronger than anybody could ever imagine that it is. What are you reading? What are you studying? What are you filling your mind with? I love jazz, and I've stopped listening to as much jazz because now I found this app called Audible. I listen to books. I turned my car into a library. When I get in the car, I start listening to books. When I sit out back and watch the ducks float up and down the lake at my house, I'm listening to books because I'm exercising the strongest muscle in my body. So I tell that story to tell young and old your situation that you're currently existing in does not have to be the end of where you arrive. Doesn't matter where you start, it's where you finish that you focus on. It's that word focus again. Because if you have focus and you're intentional on your focus, then you can get the results that you desire.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been an amazing time. I've enjoyed our conversation. Before I let you out of here, though, I've got to do what we do with everybody. It's kind of like a quick or rapid fire of questioning. But I got to ask, are you ready?
Well, you know, Will Smith says, if you stay ready, you never have to get ready.
There you go. There you go. So I promise it won't be too tough.
Okay.
So the first question is, what's your favorite food?
Favorite food? Toss up. Either turkey burgers or chicken wings.
Turkey burgers or chicken wings?
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Buffalo.
just regular fried boneless rings or
Buffalo wings.
buffalo wings. Gotcha. Favorite ice cream?
Vanilla.
Vanilla.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Favorite song?
Favorite song. I've got a bunch of them. Where would I be without you?
What is it about that song?
It talks about partnership. It talks about really loving somebody.
Favorite movie?
Coach Carter.
Favorite book?
Favorite book. Good to Great
Good to Great.
by Jim Collins.
By who?
Jim Collins.
Jim Collins. Good to Great by Jim Collins. All right. Your favorite hobby?
Golf.
Are you pretty good?
They won't throw me off the course. I haven't played in a while, but you know, I haven't been thrown off the course yet.
Sounds
I
good
used
to
to work
me.
at a golf resort. I'm sorry?
Okay. I said sounds good to me. They won't throw you off. Okay. Last question. Favorite destination or vacation spot?
Favorite destination or vacation spot? Oh gosh. Probably Aruba.
Aruba. What is it about Aruba?
On the island, the white sand beaches, blue water, and just relaxation.
Yeah, yeah. Aruba's one of my favorite vacation spots too. It's absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So thank you. That's the end of the rapid fire questioning. I believe that if we meet each other at the human level first, we can find commonalities before we just look for differences. And a lot of times, just simple things like that, movies or ice cream or where you like to go or a hobby, can create a connection that we've never even thought about. And so thank you for entertaining that for me. Now we have come to the end of our conversation, and I could sit and talk to you forever. I have learned so much today. So thank you so much for sharing your heart, your mind, and your wisdom. Before we go, though, one of the things that we like to do is lend the platform. It's your platform today. We've heard from you today, but give you some lasting words, whether it's to an individual, a community, to the world, whoever you want to talk to, whatever you want to say. So at this moment, I'm going to put myself on mute, and you have the stage.
Fantastic. Well, first of all, let me thank you very much for allowing me to share just a little essence of who I am and what I'm about. But you know, the one thing that I want to make sure that everybody understands, I'm just a normal person, just like you. I only believe a few things. Number one, we only go around once in life. We only go around once in life, and believe it or not, this is no practice. So we have to take life by the horns and live it to its fullest. We have to do something that helps other people learn. We have to do things that help other people earn. And we have an obligation to return. as much to our community as we can. So I teach leadership. I love leadership. I call myself a leadershipologist because leadershipology is the study of leadership. And one of the things I've learned, I'll close with this, one of my favorite poets, she'd ask me who my favorite poet was, but I'm going to tell you who my favorite poet. God rest her soul. Her name was Maya Angelou. Maya said this. I believe this in my heart of hearts. People may forget what you said, but you may forget everything I said today. People may even forget what you do. You don't know me and I haven't done anything to you yet. The one thing people will never forget is how you make them feel. And I hope the time that we've spent together has made you feel that I'm number one, human, number two, approachable, and number three, focused on making this world a better place for you, for me, for your children, my children, and my children's children's children. Until the next time, I'm Velton Showell. Thanks for having me today. God bless.
Well said, Mr. Showell. Thank you so much. To our viewers, I want to say thank you so much for viewing, being here today, participating, and listening to Mr. Showell as he told his story through his lens. Now, you know what I always say, the first part is just listening because everyone deserves to be seen and heard. Everyone deserves to be seen and heard. The second part, after you listen, is to check yourself. I check me, you check you, for biases that maybe we don't even know that we have. For thoughts that came today through Mr. Showell's story that you've never seen it through that lens before. You've never heard it said quite that way before. And maybe something sparked within inside of you that was different, something that you've never felt before. I implore you to explore it. I implore you to look at those different places and take actions, whether it's finding out more, doing a little bit more research. The truth is, Mr. Showell told us today, we have to be intentional and we have to be focused. Those two things have to happen first because we have to change our mindset first. So it starts with me, it starts with you. Then only can we impact our families, our communities, and the world. This has been the Voices of a Black Man. I am CK James, and I thank you so much for being here with us today. Tune in tomorrow for our round table. This project series ends tomorrow. Oh my gosh, I can't believe we've done 30 days. So we'll come back tomorrow with speakers from throughout this week to do a deep dive discussion on differences and commonalities in a roundtable discussion, 12 noon Eastern time. Have a wonderful day. Be blessed. Bye.